Alabama is in the playoff. They
my
screwed
God,
FSU.
they fucked FSU. Wow.
They did it. Florida State is not in the college football playoff. That is true. Yep. Florida State is not in the college football playoff. Alabama is number 4. Florida State is number 5.
Freaking believable. They just won a conference championship with a third-string quarterback undefeated, and they pushed him down. They knocked him down a spot.
2 one-loss teams. I'm closing the screen on ESPN's broadcast. 2 one-loss teams were put in over Florida State. 13-0, undefeated, conference champion, with one of the best defensive performances you'll see in a long, long time. That ranking underneath the screen is real. And for those of you who said, Tom, you're nuts, they're not going to put Florida State in, you were right. I was wrong. In no realm of any world, of any universe, did I think a 13-0 Florida State team that did what they just did this season, scheduling LSU and beating the crap out of them better than Alabama did, and going to Clemson and winning that football game, would ever be left out of the college football playoff. I don't want to pull a UCF here, but we got some shenanigans at hand. It happened before us. Texas and Alabama jumped Florida State in the final rankings. This is a legitimate thing. We're not trolling you. We're not pranking you. Florida State is not NOT in the college football playoff this year. What a sham. What a travesty. Gene, your thoughts?
First, I'm stunned. At stages of grief, going through denial, anger, bargaining, all that. There's no bargaining. This is just FSU got bent over and completely screwed. And all that we hear, I try to put it aside sometimes, like all this ESPN bias and all the SEC bias. It's not real. It's just made. It is. This is evidence that all these ESPN talking heads and the SEC nonsense, they are hook, line, and sinker, and they're basically screw the ACC. We don't care. It's that they treated the ACC as basically an FCS conference, a non-Power 5 conference at this point. This is basically like UCF. They're saying this is UCF. You went undefeated. We really don't care. If you're an SEC team, we don't care if you have a loss. We don't care, that you barely beat a USF team, that you needed a miracle, you need a bad Auburn team. We're not even going to consider that stuff. It doesn't matter because it's the SEC. And it's sickening to me. And I don't know what's going to go. I don't know how the Florida State's going to handle this, because how do you go to a bowl game? I don't care who they play and have the right motivation. Do people like Keon Coleman go, screw this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to get ready for the draft. This is nonsense. I played my heart out. I did all this stuff. And you're going to turn around and screw me and completely change the fabric of college football because of this stupid narrative and this bias nonsense. I wouldn't blame them. And it's a shame. Because then if the narrative, some players don't play, they don't win their bowl game, they say, see, we were right the whole time, Florida State. They're not going to give, even if those players play, I don't know how you get their mind right to go and play a game like that when they just got freaking bent over on national TV like this.
So anybody who wears a tinfoil hat, at least in my opinion, that hat is now legitimized moving forward. I thought it was a foregone conclusion that this isn't even a conversation, as Mike Norvell put it. Apparently it was. And a 4th and 31, somehow, some way, against a 6-6 Auburn team, allowed for Alabama to be in a position with a loss already to their resume, to jump undefeated Florida State. This is the lowest of lows in terms of college football crowning a champion. This is absurd. It shouldn't happen in the college football playoff era. You've got room for error here with 4 teams. This is the final year of the 4-team playoff. Florida State will not be a part of the 2023 college football playoff. If you signed off and you said, I'm done, hands in the air, I'm done with this crap, I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit. Personally, Gene, on this side of the screen, this side of the camera, I feel the same way. What's the point? If you're asking what's the point, I agree with you. What's the freaking point of this whole exercise, of the scheduling that Florida State did, of all the wins, if they cannot play for a national championship as a 13-0 team, playing the SEC twice, going out of their way to play the SEC, going out of their way to play LSU, a team that they dominated 45-17 until garbage time. They earned that win. It happened. We saw it. Alabama didn't win by that much. They played LSU just last month.
And that and
You
that
tell me
in
it's
that game too, Jalen Daniels didn't play the fourth or end of the game either in that one.
correct. You're telling me because Jordan Travis is out, we don't belong in the playoff? You're wrong. You're wrong. This is cowardice at the highest level. This is politicking behind the scenes at the highest level. There is no reasonable argument you can make. There is a dash between wins and losses. Florida State has a 0 to the right of the dash. Both Texas and Alabama have a 1 to the right of the dash. Florida State is not in a group of 5 conference. Florida State is 13-0. And now they can't go 15-0. 14-0 is the best they can do, Gene, because they don't have the right to play for a college football national championship.
And the investment, this is just, I mean, you are so screwing over every fan base who does something. When you go through this entire thing, you make the investment. You go, they traveled great. There's a ton of fans in Gainesville. They were in Orlando for that LSU game, Tom. They were in Charlotte in crappy weather last night. They did all this stuff. They're going all over. They make this investment. And it's just like you said, what's the point? If this is how you're going to do stuff, you're going to do politics, you're going to do this nonsense. It's just like I've lost. I think it's hurt me in a way. I don't know if I'm that interested in college football anymore. I'm kind of like, this is how you're going to do things. This is how you're going to decide stuff. Like, I don't know if I want to be part of this anymore. It's just it's ridiculous. FSU got screwed. Everybody who's not with ESPN, who has half a brain, knows FSU got completely bent over. Like you said, Tom, it's politicking. It's the SEC bias. It's these ESPN idiot talking heads like Herb Street, who's on there right now, yapping his trap off. And these little wieners listen to him and they're like, well, he's making some points, I guess. I guess Alabama is a really good team. We got to get them in.
Yeah, well, one of these things is not like the other. Yesterday, the little Sesame Street bullshit that Sankey said. Well, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is undefeated. One of these teams is undefeated. The others at number 3 and number 4 are not undefeated. This is a travesty. And now we are joined by our own Jeff Cameron, who is, he thought he was going to be joining us under better circumstances. The unbelievable has happened, Jeff. Your initial thoughts. Is this real life? One of those things. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm by a wood chipper and a train track in the middle of Sandersonville, Georgia. So if we make it through this interview without Cletus killing me, I'll be better. Yeah, man, I'm in shock. I didn't think we would jump the shark. I didn't think they would do it. I figured the games mattered. I thought that, we'd reached a place where, the silliness of these shows, there's a lot of, in the past, there's been bluster. There's been, maneuvering in order to churn interest in the weekly show. But at the end of the day, they've always put in the teams that deserve to go. And Florida State is obviously deserving to go. And this time around, they decided no. And the sad part is, I don't know the recourse. I think it's the bottom line is it is one more piece of evidence that you have to get out of this conference. The ACC has nobody with a strong enough voice to vouch for them. Jim Phillips is meek and soft and has been trampled over time and again. ESPN, obviously, we all know, it has an SEC bias. That has long been the case. Oftentimes in the past, I've argued that the SEC rightfully is a conference thought of as the strongest. But when you looked at the SEC this year out of conference, the resume wasn't there. And Florida State took on 2 SEC teams, beat them both, one on the road, one on a neutral site. Florida State beat, as we all know, 8 bowl teams. So it's not like the schedule is the problem. So at the end of the day, the politicking worked for Sankey. The relationship and the money made the decision, and not the football on the field. And again, if we want to go by power rankings, fine. There might be 7 or 8 teams that you would have as a 2 to 10 point favorite over Florida State, but that's not how these things are decided. You play the games for a reason. And if you win all of them, every last one of them, in a Power 5 conference and emerge as the champion, it is hard to figure how it is that you do not get in this situation. Florida State did not give them ammunition to be left out. They didn't lose a game. Alabama lost a game at home by double digits. Texas lost a game to an Oklahoma team that really struggled down the stretch. So, again, Florida State did everything they had to proved time and again what a team really means, overcoming injuries time and again to win a football game. But you can argue that today, and there have been many moments along the way in the history of college football, but you can argue that today they made a mockery of the sport, a complete mockery of the sport. And it's hard to care about a sport that doesn't take itself seriously and is compromised. At some point, you begin to feel like perhaps when the integrity is in question, that you're watching wrestling, that results don't matter, and that it's all a sham. And that is a shame because I'm a college football fan, first and foremost, and have been my whole life. I don't know anymore. Next year it won't matter because there'll be 12 teams, but they'll never be able to undo what was done here today with this travesty. You'll never be able to go back and say, ooh, whoopsie, we screwed it up. And I just hate being bought into the system now. You know, next year we'll care about Florida State. We'll care what happens, but I don't want to give this college football committee, this college football playoff, my respect and my time. And so it's very, very difficult now to kind of take the sport seriously. It's a shame. But again, I think it emphasizes you got to get out of this conference. You have weak leadership in front of the camera and behind it. And obviously nobody was advocating for Florida State in a way that they should have been, because this is so easy to argue. It's just a travesty.
It is. Jeff, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. It's impossible to answer, I know, but you're a wordsmith and you have been for a long time. One of your first years, talking about Florida State officially on the airwaves was a wire-to-wire national championship. But my question is very simple. What's the point?
Correct. Yeah. What's the point of winning all of the games? What's the point of playing the games if we're just going to say, well, I think so-and-so's better? Well, great. I'm glad you think that. And I think this guy's better and this team's better. It doesn't really matter what you think. Who won the games when they were played? Florida State beat 8 bowl teams, guys. 8. What do you have to do? They've scheduled 2 out of conference games against SEC teams. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You know, in some ways, Florida State was betrayed by LSU being average and for Florida falling on their face, and really the SEC not holding up their end of the bargain. But by all means, let's reward the SEC for the mediocrity out of conference this year and just assume that those were hiccups along the way and let them get in, because we think maybe possibly an Alabama team that needed a miracle on 4th and 31 to beat an Auburn team that just got smoked by 30-plus points from New Mexico State is better. Really? We think an Alabama team that almost lost to South Florida, USF, is that great, do we? Hey, look, bravo on beating Georgia. It's impressive that you beat Georgia. Unfortunately, the other games matter too. We're looking at the totality of a resume. Sorry, man. If you want to make the playoff, don't lose. But apparently that doesn't matter anymore. Do whatever you want. Lose to the right team and have the right representation, and you'll get in either way.
And Jeff, on this whole best things thing, and to take this a step further, we're going to say, okay, well, this team, if they played a couple times, this team should win most of the time. Well, if you win a championship, let's say the team upsets somebody for a national championship. Well, really, the team that's favored should win the whole thing. So we're changing sports altogether at this point. And I'll go back to this again. Just have Vegas, have PFF, have one of them decide who the top 4 teams are, because apparently losses don't matter anymore. It's just whoever's favored to win that game in the head-to-head. And I'm curious on because we understand the politicking, the talking heads and all this. Was this a case of the tail wagging the dog because ESPN, Herb Street and these guys got in this pulpit all week long and were spinning this narrative about Alabama to be in, about Texas ought to be in, all these things? Did the committee hear that so often that it impacted their decision instead of just in a vacuum looking at this stuff objectively? To me, I think they had a huge impact on this. ESPN and these talking heads, Feinbaum and these guys all week long banging the drum for the SEC.
It's hard to imagine that it didn't influence. Money is always where you can go back to. Always go back to the money. And, talking heads are usually paying lip service to what they're told to do. There's a marching order, and you go out and you do that. And it's unfortunate that there's not integrity in that. I have no doubt that you can make an argument that there are better teams than Florida State. That's never been the case. It's never been something I had a problem with. If you wanted to say, I think so-and-so is better than Florida State, you can say that and you can believe it and we can argue it. But I think at the end of the day, every reasonable person understood that even if you didn't think Florida State was one of the best four teams, you knew that if they finished the year, if they found a way to get across the finish line undefeated as a Power 5 conference champion with 8 wins over bowl teams and 2-0 over the SEC, that had to be enough. That's the reality of the situation. Again, if losses aren't going to matter, then every year we can just line up and say, I know that by the way, the 7-5 team had a lot of injuries to start the year, but they've got to, in my mind, they've won 4 straight. I think they're one of the better teams, and I'm going to put them over this 11-1 team. What's the point of playing the games? Why play the games?
Yep.
That has to matter. You know how hard it is to go undefeated? Ask Texas, ask Alabama, ask Georgia.
Ask Florida. They've never done it.
Yeah, ask all of these teams that are in front of us now in the playoff, by the way, not named Washington. Kudos to Washington for taking care of business. All those other teams, Michigan dominating the sorry-ass Big Ten. Yeah, go ahead. Ask them how difficult it is to go undefeated because those teams couldn't find a way to do it. And I think we jumped the shark today, guys. We jumped the shark today, and now it's going to be very hard to have credibility in this sport anymore. How can you take it seriously? And I get it, man. If you're not a Florida State fan, you're listening to this, you're like, well, guys, I don't think you're a top 4 team. Again, it's not about that. And you're going to hear them say, well, we're tasked with bringing in the 4 best teams. Come on, man. We've all watched the way this has operated over the years. You say that, but you also put an emphasis on being a Power 5 conference champion. This is an undefeated Power 5 conference champion. In the past, they've always made sure that the most deserving team got in, and today they did not.
Yeah, so let's try this on in a different sport very quickly. I take you to January 20th, 2019, in which the AFC Championship game is played. I think there was a certain owner who was in a Jupiter parlor before the game started that day. The New England Patriots beat the Kansas City Chiefs 37-31 in overtime. The Chiefs never touched the ball in overtime. I would like to retroactively congratulate the 2018 Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs because they were clearly the better team than New England was. I know what the score said on the field, 37-31, but Kansas City was the better team. We all know it. We all know it. The result is there, but we all know that Kansas City was a better team. So you know what? Let's start printing up the Super Bowl champion hats at this point.
Tom, a bunch of those 1990s FSU teams too. I guess we've got a lot of national championships. We might as well start putting those banners up because they're the best team at the end of the year. Let's do it.
We've made fun of Clemson for putting ACC championship asterisks in their stadium, for Auburn for claiming any number of national championships that they did not rightfully earn. We made fun of UCF just a few years ago for claiming a national championship because they went undefeated and they played in a New Year's Six Bowl and won it. We're now in that seat, guys. That sucks. We're in that seat.
Yeah, no, I'm sad for the sport today. I really, as much as I could go off on a rant here and it could get as vitriolic as we would all need it to be because I am seething inside. The reality is I'm just sad for a sport I always loved. And now we're watching a mockery be made, and the integrity is now no longer in question. We know it has been compromised. And so this is a situation where, we used to dance around it. People always talked about it. I know every fan base feels like officials are out to get them and that ESPN's out to get them and that whomever is out to get them. But in the past, I've always kind of thought, yeah, it seems that way. There's a guy here and there that screws things up. Maybe there's some malice here and there. But on the whole, I think the sport's on the up and up, and they'll do the right thing at the end of the day. And calls break both ways, overtime, etc. I don't know that I can say that anymore with a straight face. I think we just watch the fix. It's hard to say that college football is in a good place when this is what's happening, when you've decided that the games don't matter, opinions instead are just all we're going off of here. Hey, I've got an opinion. I think there are 4 or 5 teams that off the top of my head that are better than Alabama. So at this point, we could grab, a couple of 3-loss teams out there that are playing really well at the end of the year that I think Bama would struggle with. Just a bad matchup, guys. Sorry, just a bad matchup. Gonna have to move them forward.
Yeah, should have put Georgia in, honestly, at that point. If you're going to do this.
That was a one-off. Georgia probably wins more often than not if they play Alabama. They didn't win that one. They probably do. So, yeah, they should not even count that one, too.
Thank you, Jeff. I didn't mean to cut you off there, brother, but I know you told me already that you've got a low battery situation.
Yeah, and we're worried about Cletus over there, so watch behind your shoulder.
So, listen, to my left is a Dollar General. Over to my right is the train tracks, and back over there is a wood chipper. I was like, man, this is a good place to pull off. And then I had to wait on that news.
Oh,
You'll never forget where you were. Remember the paint color, the chipped rust on the wood chipper, because Florida State is a certain character in Fargo. They were just put into the wood chipper.
Oh, man.
That's what
Hey, let
just
me
happened.
ask you a quick question, guys, before we sign off here, before I get on down the road and get out of this hellhole. What did they say? Like, I'm in the car. I couldn't
we couldn't
hear.
hear. We were out doing this. I have no idea what they said.
And did they say where Florida State's going?
No, I mean,
the show goes on, I believe, for several hours, and they do the New Year's Six in an hour or two. They announce those bowls, so we'll know in a couple hours.
Would you decline the bowl invitation?
It's interesting. I mean, there's money here, so I doubt
there's money in the players. If the players want to play it, you got to do. I mean, it's their decision. I go to them, say if they're pissed off enough, and say screw this, I go, you guys don't want to play, won't play. If you want to play, we're there. It's their decision.
It is interesting, guys. All of the games that aren't playoff games are exhibition games. We all know that. That's what's happened to the sport. The bowls used to matter. They don't. It's the college football playoff, and that's it. These other bowls are exhibitions. How many of these kids are going to say F that and opt out? Of course they will. Many of them are going pro. If put it to a vote. Put it to a vote. I'm with you, Gene. I'd ask the players. They're what matters most. And I would say, you guys want to play in this or F this? And you'd make a strong statement if you declined to go into a bowl after this, but I don't know if it's financially feasible to do such a thing.
So I interrupt you. A lot of people in the chat are saying, I haven't seen it confirmed. I can't look at ESPN at the same time. They're saying FSU, Georgia in the Orange Bowl. So I don't know if that's been leaked out or that's been reported or not, but yeah, we'll see what the players want to do. And even if they do play, and I brought this up earlier, if I'm Keon Coleman, I'm Jared Verse, people like that, at this point, I'm sorry. I mean, I get it. If they don't want to play in the bowl, I understand. I would be so pissed off for them that I'm going to go into my pro career. Screw you, college sports.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen, Gene.
But I don't think it's so. The games, the problem, they're going to go down there, and a lot of the FSU players are either not going to be in it because they got screwed, or they're not going to play, and they're going to lose. And the narrative is going to be, see, we told you all along.
Well, they know that is intellectually dishonest, and
they're already dishonest.
Yeah, they already are, and they've already been intellectually dishonest, and they've curried favor, and they've carried water. We get it. We know what they are, bowing at the feet of the mighty SEC and the mighty dollar, and that is another. I mean, again, big picture, you got to get out of this conference.
Yep.
I hate to make that point while I'm angry about college football and the integrity of college football having been obliterated today. But, they are going to play football next season. They are going to play football the following season. And it's a monumental deal at Florida State. Football has always been the driving economic force. And so if you've just been shown that if you win this conference, it doesn't matter. You're not going if they have the opinion that you're not worthy. They would never do that clearly to an SEC team. They would never do that. So you got to get out. You either got to go to the Big Ten or you got to go to the SEC, and you got to do it sooner rather than later. This is also a referendum on this conference and the way that it's viewed and the way that it's treated and the way your commissioner doesn't fight for you. I mean, I can't believe you don't have Jim Phillips front and center right now calling ESPN and the rest of those talking heads every name in the book. I know that's classless and you could do it in a way that was professional, but you need to do that. You better see that commissioner somewhere right now talking about this travesty, because I promise you the commissioner of the SEC, Greg Sankey, would be doing it. He just did it yesterday. And I promise you the Big Ten would be doing it as well. This is a joke.
It is. It is. What a weird day to document. I think it's appropriate on this day that our field report is from Jeff Cameron next to a wood chipper in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. It's kind of oddly appropriate today. Jeff, safe travels home. Thank you for the coverage of the event and everything that happened this weekend. But
great job, Jeff. Safe
Thanks, guys.
We'll
for my fellow Noles out there, man, I'm so sorry. We'll talk about it on Monday, but I apologize, guys. It sucks. We got screwed. Be good, everybody.